Hey, what's going on, y'all? Back with another one. Back with another. We're gonna look into contractarianism. We'll see what's going on here. Let me get in. Let me get in. Let me get in real quick. Let me get in real quick. Let me get in real quick. Fuck some. Hold on. Let me get in real quick. I'm gonna check everything before I get done. All right. Let me set this right. Let me set this right. Oh, they did it right. Okay. So select this political world system, save. Here we go. All hail Grace Goldie advisor. What's going on, man? What's going on? What's going on? Appreciate you. Appreciate you. And we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it. Let me get set up real quick. Let me get set up real quick. Let me get set up. I'm going to get set up real quick. We're gonna talk about it. I'm gonna get to my actual content because everything is here. Let's see right quick. I'm gonna share this out. Yeah. Boom. There we go. Oh, oh, he did it. Oh shit. God damn it. Delete. 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 All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. Greetings, Shar. Greetings. 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 Back with this one real quick. Yeah. Now we're gonna get into this subject right here. This is an ideology that I've been covering. This philosophy is basically it talks about it's like a theory, it's like a political philosophy, but it's legitimate, you know, what it is. But we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it. So it's one of the things. So let me set this real quick. We're just gonna jump into it right now. So what we have here, we're going to our philosophy basics right here. So we're gonna get into it. Let's see, make sure y'all read the screen or let me see. Do I want it? Nah, it's just I'll read it off to y'all. Okay, contractarianism is refers to both to the theory and the political on the legitimacy of the political authority and ethical theory concerning the origin or legitimate content of moral norms. Both were developed from the concept of social contract, the idea that the people give up some rights to the government and other authority in order to receive or jointly preserve in social order. Social contract theory provides the rationale behind the historical important notion that legitimate state authority must be derived from the constant of the governed, where the form of context of this consent derives from the idea of contrast or mutual agreement. Contractarianism suggests that people are primarily self-interest in that a rational assessment of the best strategy for attaining the maximization of their self-interest will led them to the actual morally and to consent to the governmental authority. That's the introduction of it. So, you know what I'm saying? Like that's one of the reasons I want to cover it so much. So we're going to get into the social contract of it, like it says here. And it goes back to Plato and, and Epicurus. So we're going to get in this notion right here. So I'll be on mute for a minute and I'll be right back. All right, back at it. Okay, social contract. So y'all know, are y'all familiar with Plato and his right here? So we're gonna mention, okay, Plato and his Socratic dialogue, Crito, who first pointed out that the members within the society implicitly agreed to the terms of a kind of a social contract by their choice to stay within the society. Epicurus. Oh, we're talking about utilitarianism right here. And this is Stoicism right here. This is what this is about. Had also explicitly endorsed the idea that justice comes from a joint agreement not to harm each other. See, that's where utilitarianism comes from. It comes from Epicureanism. Yeah. I talk about this a lot on content. So this is very important. I kind of like this topic right here. I might do a part 2 to this. Okay. During the Renaissance, thinkers such as the Spaniard Francisco Sarrares, 1548, 1617, theorized a kind of a natural law in the attempt to limit to the divine right of an absolute monarchy. But the early 17th century Dutch philosopher Hugo Grotius, 1583 to 1645, but the introduction of the modern idea of natural rights of individuals, human rights, which we have in order to preserve ourselves, was brave enough to suggest that these laws would still even were there no God. Uh-oh. But it was Thomas Hobbes who took the theory forward into a more explicit way. Here we go. He argued that in the primitive, unstructured social order, a state of nature, individuals have unlimited nature freedoms, and their words or actions are bound only by their conscience. However, this general anatomy also includes the freedom to harm all of who threaten one's own self-preservation, and for others to the harm in their own interests. Hobbies was of the opinion to the humans are by their very nature nasty and the mean. It is therefore, he argued, in an individual's rational self-interest to voluntarily subjugated his freedom of action in order to obtain the benefits of provided by the formation of a social structures, civil rights. So individuals implicitly agree to a social contract within the state or authority in return for the protection from the harm in more functional society. For Hobbes, however, as detailed in his Latavian of 1657, it is important that the social contract involves an absolute government that does not rule by consent, effectively totalitarianism, like I recently talked about in 3 parts y'all can watch, since in his view of people cannot be trusted. But the position of free individuals in a state nature of presented by Hobbes so dire as a life which is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, that are willing to contract to submit all except their actual lives is to the will of the sovereign, who's thus exercise a almost absolute political authority. Here we go. Here we go. John Locke. Here we go. We're right at it. Right at it. Develop the theory further, arguing that this contract is only legitimate to the extent that it meets the general interests. Therefore, when failings are found in the contract, we effectively renegotiate, and it should change the terms using methods such as elections, legislature. Since the rights come from the agreeing to the contract and accepting responsibility for the following its rules, then those who simply choose not to, the rights into the rest of the society can be expected to protect itself against them by the threat of punishment. In effect, of society works by mutual coercion. Hold on for a minute. I got something in my ear. Hold on. Oh man. Woo. Got me real quick. Let me see. Mutual cohesion. Yeah, society works by their threat of punishment. Okay. Mutually agree upon in the event contracts leveling the tyranny exercise of prerogative power to the detriment of the ends of the people. Locke saw the right of the rebellion a justifiable response. Locke's conception of the social contract was in the individualist liberal tradition, very influential in the development of the classic liberalism and modern democracy and the theatrical underpinnings of the American Revolution of 1775, 1783. Okay. He said committing cause and obligation rules and all that such. Yeah. That's by John Locke. Okay. John Jacques Rousseau in his 1762 treaty, Du Contrat Social, that's in French, Du de Contrat Social, the social contract outline is such less individualist and much more collectivist version of contract theory based on the conception of the popular sovereignty, the belief that the legitimacy of the state is created by the will or consent of its people, who are the sum of its political power. On his advocacy of the direct democracy, we heard this before, the Swiss has this model as well. He argued that as an individual, the subject can be egoist and decide that his personal interests should be override that the collective interest in, however, as a part of the collective body, the individual subject puts aside of his egoism to create a general will. The persistence of equality and freedom in society. Reservoir goes so far as to indicate that people who does not obey the general will be must forced to be free. Reservoir's version of the social contract is one of the most often associated with the term social contract itself. His theories had a strong influence on both the 1789 French Revolution and the subsequently formation of the socialist movement. Yep, that's factual. Yeah. So we talking about social contract right here. We talking about contractarianism. Okay. Okay, let's go with Pierre Joseph Proudhon. I've talked to him various subjects on, I would say, anarchism and things like that. We've covered him a lot. He's an anarchist right here. 1809, 1865, advocate of a conception of a social contract, which did not involve an individual surrendering the sovereignty to others. He argued that the contract was not between individuals and the state, but rather between individuals themselves refraining from coercion or governing each other while maintaining complete individual sovereignty, resulting in a non aggressive utopian state of anarchism. I talk about this a lot. Did several streams on it. Y'all can check that out if the ones that's new that's coming in. The most important contemporary political social contract theorist is John Rawls. I mentioned him before, 1921 to 2002, who effectively resurrected the social contract theory in the second half of the 20th century. In his theory of justice, Rawls attempt to reconcile the liberty and equality in a principled way. He does so appealing to the old ideas of the social contract. So we got this right here, and we're going to talk about the criticism. We will get into the Encyclopedia of Global Justice, contractarianism. Yeah, contractarianism as a type. We're going to talk about that as well. I got it as well, and see, we got a whole link on it. So we're going to get into the theory. So I'm going to see who's in here. What's going on, man? What's going on? What's going on? Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. I don't know what you're talking about. He said, why does we follow the law of the bluest eye? That's a strange question, but we'll get to that. I'm gonna stick to the topic. I'm gonna get you in fragments. I'm not gonna try to deviate what we're talking about. Okay, the criticism of contractarianism. David Hume was an early critic of the validity of social contract theory. Arguing against any theory is based on historical contract, on the grounds that one should not be bound by by the consent of one's ancestors. He also questioned to what extent the fallback state of nature, which underlies most social contract theory, is actually historical accurate, or whether it's just a hypothetical or possible situations. Others have pointed out that with an assumed initial position, which is sufficiently dire, such as the position by Hobbes, contractarianism may lead to legislation of totalitarianism, as Hobbes himself foresaw. See, that's a good argument. See, I talked about this 3 times on this stream on the political world system, so y'all can check that out. Different breakdowns on 3 of them. The last one I just talked about Putin and the Ukraine situation, but I ain't gonna get into that. I used that as a topic of the hour, so y'all can check that one out. Some commenters have argued that the social contract of the type described cannot be considered a legitimate contract at all, on the grounds that the agreement is not fully voluntary or without coercion. Coercion, because of a government can will and use force against anyone who does not wish to enter into the contract to Reserot's conception of the social contract. Even individuals who disagree with the elements of the social contract must nevertheless agree to abide by or risk of punishment. They must be forced to be free. It is argued that this is the idea of the forces negates to requirement that a contract to be entered into voluntarily, or at least to permit individuals to obtain from entering into a contract. In response, it has been countered that the name contrast is perhaps misleading. Social compact has been suggested as an alternative. In that way, individuals explicitly indicated their consent simply by remaining in the jurisdiction. Either way, social contract theory does seem to be more in accordance with the contract law to the time of Hobbes and Locke, based on the mutual exchange of benefits that in our own. Other critics have questioned the assumption of individuals are always self-interest, and they would actually want the benefits of society, supposedly offered of its descriptive theory, than a normative guide or a justification. Contractarian ethics. Let's talk about moral ethics. Contractarian ethics, or the moral theory, or contractarianism, claims that the moral norms of derive their normative force from the idea of contract or mutual agreement. It is a deontological theory. Okay, it's like deontology. So that's kind of like utilitarianism right there. They all in the same realm, moral theories. The moral act of those we all agree if we were unbiased. And the moral rules themselves are a sort of a contract. Therefore, only people who understand agree to the terms of the contract are bound by it. The theory stems initially from the principle of a social contract. Thomas Hobbes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and John Locke, which, as described above, essentially holds the people to give up some rights to the government and or the other authority in order to receive or jointly preserve in social order. Social order. Heard that in a reggae song. Contractualism is a variation of contractarianism, largely developed by T.M. Scanlon, 1940 and present. He's still alive. In his book, What We've Owed to Each Other, it claims to be the moral theory grouped to reality, and is based on the Kantian ideas that ethics is essential in personal matter, and the right and wrong right and wrong or matter of whether we can justify the action to other people. This sounds like utilitarianism to me. This is in the same realm as well. We call it deontological. We're just gonna look at it for a minute. Deontology, like I said, what I said, consequentialism, yes. This is the same realm of utilitarianism. These are ethic, moral theories. So when you see consequentialism and things like that, and Kantontology and all this shit deals with utilitarianism, and they're all in the same umbrella. Here we go, right here. Utilitarian philosophy, right here. See, anything that's moral, right, and the maximum happiness and all this stuff. Yes, yes. Contractarianism is no far. So it's a system people believe in. But this is an interesting one I haven't touched. This is the one I'm going to put. So we put this out here. So I'm going to put this in the chat. Y'all can read it for yourselves. The ones that want to know. I got this from the basic philosophy. We're going to move on to the next one. So we're going to put this in the chat. So we see what we hear. So yeah, I'm going to address the individuals in the chat. Hold on. I'm going to paste it. And there we go. So what we got here is y'all blocked her? What's going HBICRS? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Okay. Let's see what this person says right here. Oh. Well, I don't listen to him. Well, that's not the topic. I'm talking about contractarianism, yeah, but that's not on the same umbrella. That's a whole nother spiel. The majority of the population has no idea contractor is, which makes them incompetent, but their ignorance is by design. This makes the contract a fraud. Well, that's a fair assessment, but it depends on what you're talking about. I'm just talking about the moral theory aspect, but we're gonna get into the next part in a minute. So I'm gonna drop this down and things like that. So we're gonna move this up. So we're gonna get into the next part. I know people want to see what I'm talking about. I got this on Link Springer. Was it? Yeah, Link Springer. So we're gonna get into it. Yeah, that's a fair assessment comment. So yeah, and he said perhaps it's a problem too. Contracts are written in foreign language, potentially difficult to comprehend. Fraud again. Well, it depends. It depends. But sometimes it don't always have to be foreign language. So that can be debated. We got to see, but I'm going to stick to this right here. Okay. Contracts refer to the type of moral political theory that employs the idea of contract or less formal terms of agreement among individuals to the account for the content and the normative force of the requirements applicable to them. The principally those govern their interactions. But the contract involved, hold on. Yeah, I'll get this right quick. Let's see right here. I don't see something real quick. Let's see something right quick. Yeah. I want to see something real quick. I ain't gonna stop my reading for nobody. Hold on for a minute. I'm gonna get this out the way. Okay, I'm gonna read it from the top again. Hold on. Because I don't want to lose my place. I'm gonna read it from the top. I already read the purple letters, so you already know. Yeah. Because we're gonna start from the top again because I got distracted. My fault. Okay, the contract involved can be either actual or hypothetical, depending on the particular contractarian theory. It is, however, often unclear the whether to be contract involved in a given contractarian theory is an actual explicit or tactic or hypothetical, even when the contract involved is claimed to be the actual. It would be appropriate in some cases, and to understand it to be hypothetical, as it unlikely that such a contract or agreement has actually been needed. How to the norms as governing certain individuals are supposed to be justified by appealing to an actual contract or agreement. Read it by the individuals is relatively clear, burning some disqualifying conditions such as, I want to see if you read more. Oh man, they want you to read more. It's such as, oh man, it's short. And here's a reference. Yeah, it's one. Yeah. Yeah. Springer said ain't gonna let you read far, but it's a good one. We're going to I'll find something different. Hold on. So with that one is you can read. Hold on, I'll give y'all the link to that one. So we're gonna get this one out the way. So that one I read from, let's see. I'm gonna give y'all the link to that as well, because I do give out links and information when I'm talking about, and I'll put this in the chat. So we're gonna get this down to the nitty gritty. So we're gonna just do this right. We're gonna do this right because we're 30 minutes in. So yeah, so that's a lot. You know what I mean? So what we're gonna have here, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot, a lot. Okay. What is the theory of contractarianism? Okay, so I'll see it real quick. We'll get this real quick. Let's go with the Plato. Let's see the EDU. Oh, damn. That's Stanford Encyclopedia and things like that. Okay, okay, okay. We got the meaning, reference, animal ethics. Okay. They got so many. Contract philosophers. They got, yeah, Thomas Hobbes right here, John Rawls, John Locke. Yeah. These are the guys I've talked about recently. Some people just get into it and they just be like, what the fuck? Rutledge Encyclopedia Philosophy. We're going to get into philosophy a little bit. Rough list of philosophy. Let's see if you. Oh, shit. It's a small lettering. Damn, I can't. See, that's the thing about these damn things. They want to give you that small lettering. You know what? Let's try. Yeah, let's try this right here. We're going to get to the bottom. This is, he's trying to say there's a fundamental difference. So, okay, we're going to get to this part right here. We're going to just read this part. I ain't going to read this all the way, but we're going to see. We're going to see in so many words. Oh, shit. Contractarianism is a impartial moral theory by contemporary moral philosophy, but the main impartial moral theory outside of the social contract tradition is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism takes a person's moral states to be grounded in their capacity for being well-being and suffering, and it takes well-being to be their sale moral value. If it takes the appropriate to response to this value to be the promoted. Utilitarianism, thus consequentialist moral theory and morality is concerned with bringing about valuable outcomes. Okay. There is a fundamental contrast between contractarianism, contractualism and utilitarianism. Okay, that's a difference. Okay, cool. The first difference is one of the scope. Utilitarianism applies to every area of morality, which is facts, while contractualism covers only only the realm of what we owe to our what we owe to our another. Scandalon himself acknowledged that this is not the whole of morality, which is true. That's a big difference. Okay, and we return to the difference in the section of 12 and 13. The remaining difference is between the contractualism and utilitarianism related to the constant and contractualism. I mean, contractualism does not aggregate, but rather focus on the standpoint of the individual persons. But the contractualism does not regret well-being as a basic moral concept, but instead allows a variety of personal reasons. Wow, see, that's a big difference of the two. It's just a small section of that. So there's plenty of differences and things like that. So there's your difference right here. So I can give y'all this as well because I'm gonna move on to something else. That's a long read. I can't read no small ass shit like that from a distance like that. Come on now. That's crazy. And that's the only difference that I see, most people ain't gonna apply to. People ain't gonna just come through like that. So contractualism or contractarianism, there's a big difference between the two. So yeah, this is one of those things that you can just look at. So we're gonna move on and see the difference. I want to see what this is right here. Damn, it's another small reading. Hold on for a minute. Yeah, I'm going to move on. Let's see how much small reading we have. Oh, okay. Contractualism, but it goes on to contractarianism as well. So okay. Utilitarianism occupies a central place in the moral philosophy of our time, but it is not the view which most people hold. Certainly, there are very few who would claim to be act utilitarians. But for a much wider range of people, it is the few towards which they have feel themselves pressed when they try to give a theoretical account of their moral beliefs. Within the moral philosophy, it is represent a position one must struggle against if one wishes to avoid it. This is so of spite of the fact that the implications of act utilitarianism are widely a variance with firmly held moral convictions. While rule utilitarianism, the most common alternative and formulation, and strikes most people as an unstable compromise. But the widespread appeal of utilitarianism is due, I think, to the philosophical and consideration of a more or less sophisticated kind, which will pull us in a quite different direction than our first moral beliefs. But in particular, utilitarianism derives much of its appeal from alleged difficulties about the foundations of rival views. What a successful alternative to utilitarianism must do first in non utilitarian moral reasoning. In what follows, I will first describe the problem is more detailed by settling out the questions which a philosophical account of the foundations of morality must set a response to these questions, then to supply straightforward versions of utilitarianism. Finally, I will explain why contractualism, as a understand, it does not lead back to some utilitarian formula as in a normative outcome. Interesting summary. So, there's your differences right there. So, again, that's in the Cambridge. So we're just skimming through. We're talking about contractarianism, but then they talk about contractualism and all like that. So we get into it. And that's just what it is. So we're gonna get into it real quick. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. So we're gonna get into it. That's the Cambridge course. So we see in the search here. Okay. So is that the search? Yeah, it's the search. Contractarianism. This is interesting right here. Yeah, they call it contractualism, but contractarianism is based off that. So we say that's the difference of that. Let's get an example of it. Contractarian approach to the problems of ethics as the solution could be agreed upon by contracting parties, starting from certain idealized positions as examples, and no ignorance and no inequalities of power, enabling one party to force unjust solutions upon another, no malice ambitions. Interesting. Let's see real quick. So, yeah, we'll get into it. We ain't gonna play no videos. Damn that. There's a few examples. I'll read this person's last comment. What's going on, Go P? What's going on, man? This last person's comment. What are you talking about? You're on the wrong channel, bro. We're talking about contractarianism. We ain't gonna get into that. Ain't gonna argue with nobody in the chat. You're on the wrong topic, sir. I'll be back. I want to see what's going on in the background. I'll be back. All right, I'm back at it. Gotta get some water. Shit. Okay. Definition work in. Let's look at the advantages and disadvantages. We're gonna get into it. Pros and cons. Okay. Let's look at articles. Oh shit. Wrong thing. Okay, let's look at this right here. Okay, Bartley. Is it Bartley? How you How you fucking pronounce that? Hold on. BartleyB.com. It's an essay, pros and cons. Okay, I might keep this. Hold on. Because some of them I didn't keep. The pros and cons of contractarianism. Okay. Okay, we're gonna talk about it. Jordan Shivik, Dr. Nancy, Narty or something like that. So May 19th, 2017. Okay. Research paper. It's not wisdom, but authority that makes a law. This is a quote by a 16th century philosopher Thomas Hobbes, who adhered to a might makes right aspect of the modern social contract theory. In this social contract theory, Hobbes, as well as other political philosophers such as John Locke and Jean Jacques Rousseau, we just read from the basic philosophy, are to be known as contractarians. Contractarianism is, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia of a Philosophy Political Theory of Authority, claims the legitimate authority of government must derive from the consent of the governed and where he the form of content of this consent derives from. Okay. Damn. It's a lot of shit going on in the background, so y'all bear with me. Y'all bear with me. Oh shit. You know what? Damn. Yeah, it's an essay and then oh shit. Difference with liberal and country. Oh man. Oh, I gotta stop it right here. My fault. Yeah, it's one of those. Damn. Yeah, remove that shit. Hell no. Y'all ain't getting that. Fuck that. I was going to get into pros and cons, and this shit happens. God damn it. My fault. Sorry, y'all. Advantages and disadvantages. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Let's try this again. We'll find you another one. Okay. Let's see. We show more. Is it one of those? Yeah. They want you to sign in and shit. Oh man, I hate these. This is where it gets tough. I'm telling you. When you talk about these, they just want to piss people off. Yeah, I don't like that. Philosophy Basics got it down. That's the only one I can tell you. But okay, the advantages of social contract theory. Okay. So it gets you this bullshit right here. Okay. It says classroomsynonym.com. Okay, we're going to be done like that. We'll get this out of here. Okay, social contract theory is a major tenet of the liberalism. Liberalism is defined in general philosophy where the value of liberty must be measured as the highest political good in society. Social contract theory works as one approach to legitimate liberty in society. For centuries, theorists from Thomas Hobbes to John Rawls have tried to argue for a society using the theoretical concept of the social contract between all citizens and their state. I see. Theoretical experimentation. Social contract is merely a theoretical term. Therefore, an advantage to the social contract is the framework can be worked on in an abstract meaning that the theorists can create, elaborate just frameworks for society. This has allowed philosophers such as John Locke or political theorists such as John Rawls to vigorously work on the fairest, most just social contract, although one might find theory or abstract thinking. A disadvantage to historical speaking, these theorists have influenced liberalism as a whole. For example, it is hard to consider the American or French Revolution without the work of Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, or Jean Jacques Rousseau. Yep, that's very true. Contracts inclusiveness. Social contracts theoretical incentive is that a social contract strives for the fairest and the most inclusive society. For example, Thomas Hobbes, 1588, 1679, argue in this seminal work of Latavian that political authority needs, Levidian, that the political authority needs to be rested on one sole authority, that people consent toward for Hobbes, human beings, a constant war with each other over survival and resources, limiting each person's life and liberty through a legitimate government and via social contract. No war exists between people since all political power is rested in a entity such as a government that all people consent to. Hence, liberty is enhanced for all. Contract fairness. Proponents of the social contract theory argues that the many theorists create frameworks that are fairer than the current social. The fairness comes from the fact that all people under a social contract framework would work towards a social where there's others would not be harmed from gross inequality. For example, John Rawls, 1921 to 2002, argued that the social contract theory works by starting a position or the original position in Rawls' framework, where the individuals would want to live in a society where they would not want to go inequality. Political, social, economic apply to against them. Hence, everyone would want to live in a society where, for more or less, people are equal to each other, thanks to the social contract. So the contract fairness is right here what they talk about. That's number 3. And number 4, legitimate government. Okay. The main and central advantage to a social contract theory is to legitimation of government. When Thomas Hobbes first considered the idea of a social contract, it was when his country of England began. The English Civil War, during the English Civil War with the monarchy of England, was at war with proponents of preliminary system of England. For Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau, the idea that a social contract was to make sure a government could be argued upon by the citizens to avoid all types of civil wars or tyrannies. That's the 4th thing. So it's 4 things they talked about: the advantages of the social contract theory in contractarianism. And we talk about this a lot. And then I put this in the chat for y'all. So yeah, we added again. So it's just what it is. So when you get into it, you just put the bottom line, and and I'm just gonna put this out here, and I know people ain't gonna just gonna go for it, but y'all saw the link here. So yeah, I just put that in the classroom, and you do what you do. And it's one of these theories that you can go through. So I'm just reading the meats of the bones of it. So that's the advantages of it. So you can have it. You see the pros and cons and everything. So you look at things from that integral perspective, like Sir Elise. But it is what it is. So what you have here is you're just going to do your thing. So yeah. Let's see here. That's the advantage in the classroom. Okay, so we're gonna go. Let's see on the next page. A current contractarianism preference based theory. Ethical theory, I mean. Ethical theory, yeah. They got this right here. A lot of people like this shit, but I can't read that. Y'all gotta give me something better. I'm not, contractualism is the same thing as contractarianism. So I'm gonna stick with the topic because when they get to the lisms, I'm not fucking with that. See, keyword is social contract theory. Let's keep that in mind. We're gonna stick with it. Competition leaves people fighting for reputation, power, personal gain, the safety of themselves. He said the pros and cons was social contract. Okay, that's what we're reading. And every waking moment, personal gain and safety of themselves and their family. Every waking moment, Mount, you must be vigilant, not knowing what to trust or which breath might be your last. But this scenario is the Thomas Hobbes describes in his Leviathan as the state of culture. I mean nature. Did the war of all against did the war of all against all the persist of without the presence of a strong governing body. Number one, the paper will outline Hobbes' arguments on why surrounding some of our freedoms, in particular, freedoms is rational and how nothing is unjust without a commonwealth, while also representing objections in the social contract theory and in turn evaluating those oppositions. Previously described the scenario people have this apparent through the definition of what it means to have a social contract. Participants must be free, equal, rational to create the agreed upon the social contract. Hold on for a minute. Okay. Okay, y'all give me 1 sec. I'm distracted with something. Hold on. Get this phone is laggy sometimes. Y'all gotta forgive me. Y'all gotta forgive me because sometimes it'll lag like that. Yeah, lag like that. Okay. It says body proper. Damn. I'm too far with it. Let me read this up close. I cannot deal with no small lettering. Rational nothing in the Commonwealth while an objection. Okay, social theory turning to evaluating those positions. Okay, the previously described scenario, people show more content. Okay, this is apparent through the definition of what it means to enter a social contract. Participants must be free and equal and rational to create the agree upon the social contract. The rights assigned to those contractarians will go towards other free, equal, and rational people. In order to have genuine moral importance, you must be a part of this system. With your cooperation benefiting everyone in the commentary else, there is no reward. It's allowing you to be a part of the group. Number two, this will only create a free rider problem where personal receives all benefits of others making sacrifices without giving anything up themselves. Thus, contractarianism offers no protections to the neediest amongst us, forgetting to assign rights to infants and severely disabled and animals. They cannot contribute to social contract society, are not labeled as free, equal, and rational. We would give them security if we wanted to, but however, the reasons against this ideal, since we have get so we can get what we want from without sacrificing anything. Infants may not be free equally and rational when they are young, but it cannot be disputed that every person of influence and importance was once a baby and had to develop into beings that can enter the social contract. The immense potential for contribution should provide reasons enough to include protection for these community members. Physically disabled person may have an incredible intellect that solves the world's most complicated mathematical formula. But the causing in a renaissance is engineering. Stephen Hawking, who had Lou Gehrig's disease, is one of the most important psychics of our time, providing theories on relatively quantum gravity and the cosmos and its rational is not undermined. Only his freedom of movement is, yet the scientific community would have lost a critical asset if he had not been treated like everyone else. The, the substance that comes from has contributed to generations of keeping humans alive. We would sacrifice our freedom and convenience to give the creators enough food against the shelter. So yeah, this is one of those things right here. The pros and cons of the social justice and things like that. So as we can see it in so many words, and I'm gonna put this link in and gonna post it, so I know people are gonna read that for yourself and things like that. So yeah, I'll put this in the chat as well, so get y'all the meat of it. So and that's just the thing of the pros and cons of it. But yeah, man, like we talking about contractarianism, things like that. So we're not worried about anything. So you got your pros and cons of it. You got your little thing. So basically, you have something here. So I'm saying in so many words, you deal with it, and that's just it. And that's just what it is. But so we talked about the pros and cons of it. Damn, this won't go. What's wrong with this damn thing? Oh shit. Yeah. Something going on. Yeah. It was acting up for a minute. I'm like, what the fuck? Tradition. Modern social contract tradition. Okay, let's read this part right here. This chapter discusses the central strands of the modern social contract tradition. Yeah, distinguishing between moral and political theories. On the base a contractualist or contractarian theories on the other. It it presents one example of each of the ensuring ensuing a category in Cathier's moral contractarianism and Buckman's political contractarianism and Scandalon's moral contractualism and Rawls' political contractualism is the conclusion strength and weakness of social contract theories are discussed. So let's see this right here, right quick. Hold on. Yeah, that's the key words. Social contract, vial of ignorance, contractarianism. You got your keywords of reference. So this is just a moral and tradition. So not much on it. I could do a part two to this or whatever. I'm thinking about it, the pros and cons. And they talk about what's the problems with it. Oh God. They don't want you to view that shit. Well, that's a no go. It was supposed to be a good one, but it's so small as hell anyway. Okay, three problems with contractarian and consequenceless ways of assessing social institutions. Okay, okay, they got an actual problem. Small read here. Which each of our three criminal laws topics defining offense, apprehending subtext, and establishing punishments. We feel, I believe, the strong moral resistance to the idea that our practice should be settled by prospective participant perspective. This becomes quite clear when we look at how to reforms suggested by institutional institutional viewing might combine once we considered all three topics together. And imagine more extensive and swifter use of the death penalty in homicide cases coupled with somewhat lower standards of the evidence, or to think of the bank above the backing of a strict liability and criminal statute within the death penalty. Of course, such reforms would increase the execution of innocence. But their proponents will tell us, and any penal system involves in the punishment of some innocence as it provides for the death penalty. The execution of some innocence, moreover, wise way worse for the innocents to punish, therefore, innocents to suffer and an equivalent harm in some other way, and formulated from a perspective and participant, equivalent for harm others than other way, formula perspective, participant perspective. Why not run a small risk of being innocently executed in exchange for reducing much more significantly the risk of dying prematurely in other ways? That's how you extract that. So, not much here by the article. They give you references and things like that. So, we ain't going to get into that. That's a long read. So, I'm just going to put this out here. They got this book. You can also, I'm gonna put this in here. Y'all can check out for yourselves. So the thing is, we just here, man. Like, we're just giving you some links to look at. So, what I'm saying? Like we here. So I know people don't talk about it. It's the social order and things like that. So I know people just gotta do their thing. And yeah. Yeah, it's an hour. So we're still going. So it's may not be a long one because it's one of those. I usually do 2 hours on this. I'm gonna stay in within the mark. See people who come through and things like that. So it's one of those things. Contractarianism reminds me of one of those social order type systems. Might do a part two and see what's what, because most people they don't understand it that much. So I think that's the perfect way of learning of the two. So when you have that type of thing, you understand what's going on. So, and that's just what it is. And I think it's just what it is. And you know what time it is. And I think a lot of times when you want that full social order, and I think there's rules and consequence, they try to compare the two. So you don't have much, but I think people don't like it, and I think it has a little pros and cons to it. So when you have these things and you have topics like these become annoying to most people. So you're gonna get to a point. This one is kind of like and very interesting, and you just expound on what you're doing. So yeah, this is one of those things that I see a lot. And contractarianism is one of those things you can be like, all right, this is going to be the thing that we talk about. We may do a part two on this because I had to go in depth on this more because I read a couple of things on it, and we're going to talk about the moral. We're going to talk about the moral, so we're going to talk about that. It talks about contractualism. See it devies off to that. So I'm trying to keep it in the realm. Yeah, so that's one of the things. Okay, wishful thinking. Okay, we're gonna get this in a minute. I'm gonna see what's what. Okay, this is really good. But yeah, we'll read this in a minute and get my thing right. So as we get into the disadvantage, it's on link.springer.com talking about the disadvantages of contractarianism as well. And we're going for the abstract. The contract metaphor is a political moral theory is misguided. It is a poor metaphor both descriptively, normatively, but here I address it normative problems. Normatively, contractarianism is supposed to give justifications for political institution, for moral rules. Just a contracting in the laws is supposed to give justification for claims of obligation based on consent or agreement. This metaphorically association fails for several reasons. First, an actual contract generally govern prisoners a prisoner's dilemma or exchange. Relations in the so-called social contract governs these and more diverse interactions as well. Second agreement, which is the moral basis of the contractarianism, is not right making pure per se, but the third contract is the laws gives information on what were interests of the parties. The hypothetical social contract requires such knowledge. It does not reveal hints of the moral contemporary contraction, therefore, previously rational as it's based because of its it requires a prior rational uh not diversion, derivation of interest or this value. Finally, contractarian moral theory has the further disadvantage that unlike contract in the law, its agreement cannot be connected to referencing motivation to abide by theirs. Yeah, so you got it right here in this little link right here. So, it's just like what it says right here. So it's on the linkspringer.com contract and wishful thinking. So that's another one I got for y'all. So, and I'm not gonna keep dropping links like that. So it's a very interesting ideology, man. Like it talks about the social contract and things like that. This is something I'm recently learning myself, but yeah, man, this is the first time I ever heard this. This is a good topic I want to touch. Very interesting. All these theories and political theories that you see people use, and they use these words. to combat. So they got the Penn Law on here. So yeah, they got all these writings and readings, long ass readings. Ain't nobody gonna do all that. So that's my thoughts on it. But that's it. So we still, look around and things like that. Greetings, college, and greetings, greetings, greetings. It is what it is. So you do what you do. So when you talk about social norms, contractarianism is one of them. So you get to the feel of what it is and what it makes it and what it ain't. So I understand people love talking about these systems sometimes. They get carried away and then they just go crazy and things like that. So I'm gonna take these boots off. So you get the things that you're doing. So I understand. I understand. Like sometimes when you talk about social contracting, it's just one of those things that you just gotta get used to, and you just be like, all right, this is good. And I understand people got their own little vices and things like that. So it is what it is. All right, Oxford dictionaries, damn, bibliographies and stuff. Damn, this is small. God damn, I ain't reading that shit. Y'all crazy. Y'all on some bullshit, y'all. What is classical contractarianism? We're gonna get into that real quick. It says it's often identified apparently false belief in the real historical contract or with a deeply problematic relationship between a hypothetical contract and the real world. PDF. Damn, it's another PDF. Damn. Y'all can't. Ugh. Y'all kill me with this. So absolutism and things like that. We'll get into this a little bit. Another small read. So you know what I'm saying? But yeah, we're gonna keep this going. So you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I'll be right back. All right. Back at it again. Okay, standard Stanford Encyclopedia. Damn, that's a long read. Hold on. Standard. Okay. You know what? Fuck it. I'll read this off. I might do this in a part two. I might do this in a part 2 so I can read it. Or, you know what? You know what? I got an idea. Okay. I'm going to read this. I might add this. And we talked about this earlier. I want to see how many minutes we got. So yeah, we got time because I know this is a long read. It's an hour. Okay. So we're gonna put this out here. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna read this shit right now. Okay. Contractarianism names both political theory of legitimacy of political authority and moral theory about the origin and the legitimate content of moral norms. The political theory of authority claims that the legitimate authority of government must derive from consent to the governing, where the form of content of this consent derives from the idea of contract of moral agreement. Moral theory of contractarianism claims that the moral norms derive their normative force from the idea of contract or mutual agreement. Contractarians are thus skeptical of the possibility of grounding morality or political authority, either divine will or some perfectionist ideal of the nature of humanity. Social contract theorists from the history of political thought includes Hobbes, Locke, Kant, and Rousseau. But the most important contemporary political, social, and contract theorist is John Rawls, who's effectively resurrected social contract theory in the second half of the 20th century, along with David Gauthran, who is primarily a moral contractarian. There is no necessity for a contractarian about political theory to be contractarian about moral theory. Although most contemporary contractarians are both, it has been more recently recognized that there are two distinctive strands of social contract thought, which is now typically by the names of contractarianism and contractualism. Contractarianism, which stems from the Hobbesian line of social contract thought, holds the persons are primarily self-interest, that the rational assessment of the best strategy for attaining maximization of their self-interest well led them as a actual morally where the moral norms determined by the maximization of joint interests. To the consent to the governmental authority, contractualism, which stems from the Kantian line of the social contract, thought holds that the rational requires that we respect persons, which in turn requires moral principles but must be such they can be justified each person. Thus, individuals are not taken to be motivated by self-interest, but rather by a commitment to the publicly justified to the standards of morality, to which each will be held. When gatherer or economists of James Buchanan are the paradigm of Hobbesian contractarians, Rawls or Thomas Scallion would be a paradigm of Kantian contractualists. The rest of the entry will will specifically retain the contractarian strands where the two diverge. One, fundamental elements of contractarianism. The metaphor of the social contract. 3. The morals by agreement, David Gauthier's Contractarianism. 4. The critiques of Contractarianism, subverse Contractarianism, or the bibliography, other internet resources, and related entries. Okay, let's see how much we can read this. Number 1, the fundamental elements of Contractarianism. Okay, see how much time we got. So it's an hour. So we're going to get this right away. Only this person's question right quick. So for everyone for the function out equally in of a contract, they all must be on the same reading level. I don't know what you mean by that. Read level's fine. Like, what's that got to do with it, nigga? He said, can you have a contract without language? What type of dumb question is that? No, you can't. Like, you asking, come on, man, cut it out. We'll see what wanted to deal with you. You must be new. Dude, you don't be in my chest like that. Dude, you must be new. I know you be sky watching this shit, but you must be new. And you talk about Christian converts. You know, put your ass in timeout. Got time for that. You're on the wrong subject, buddy. Stay on topic. Stay on topic. Just stay on topic. Ain't got time for that. I was reading the comments. I was like, oh man, dude, stay on topic. Ain't got time for that bullshit. Social contract has two fundamental elements of characterization of the essential situation carried variously the state of nature by the modern political philosophers. The original position by Rawls, or the initiative bargaining position by Gauthier, and characterization of the parties to the contract, particularly in terms of their rationality, motivation to come to agreement. The the initial situation posts what to be bargaining theory. It is called to no agreement position. The situation to which individuals return in case of failure to making an agreement contract, the situation may be more or less hostile, more or less social, depending on what the theorist sees as human nature. In the absence of rules of justice, be crucial to all contractarian theories. There is some scarcity or motivation for competition in the initial situation. There is some potential for gains from social interactions and cooperation. In the contemporary normative, contractarian theories that attempt to ground the legitimacy of government, or theories that claim to derive a moral ought. The initial position represents the starting point for a fair, impartial agreement, while contractualists justify the requirement of a fair, impartial agreement by reasons external to the contract itself. Contractarians hold that the success of the contract in securing cooperative interaction itself requires that the starting point and procedures to be fair and impartial. Some points of the controversy among contractarians concern to the role of the initial situations in theory. It is to be considered in actual historical situations, political historical moment, or is a contract situation completely hypothetical? Hume, or the original contract, page 470, raised the decisive objection to the normative and moral political theory based on a historical contract to the consent of one of our ancestors. One's ancestors do not blind oneself, but Donald Dworkin has raised a similar. We referenced him before in the other philosophies, but we're going to continue. Has similar concerns about the hypothetical contract or the hypothetical requirements or practical rationality that is they argue that if one is rational and among rational ethers in circumstances which an agreement in both plausible and beneficial to the rationality requires that one abide by the terms of the contract, while mainstream contractarian theories are hypothetical contract theories as a recent interesting powerful subverse use of contractarianism. Mills 1997 and Patman's 1989 see section a subversion of contractarianism below reads the contract situation in historical agreements or erect a maintain white supremacy, patriarchy, or male dominance. These later contractarian theories are not justifications of the status quo, of course, but rather a condemnation, the condemnations of therefore does not face Hume's objections. Other questions to the divine and contemporary contractarian include what are the ideal conditions and who are the ideal contractors that will make an obligatory outcomes to the contract of the actual persons. What is the content of the hypothetical agreement? We're gonna read the second part in a minute. I'm gonna mute up for a minute. So I'm gonna go on mute. Let's see how much time I got. Yeah, I got like a little hour in, so we're gonna get into it real quick. So I'll be right back. All right, back at it again. Okay, let me read the second element of the contractarian theory is a rational of contractors. First, contractarian, as opposed to the contractualist, theories usually take persons to be self-interest in order to justify the rules of morality or justice. This is because the persons are assumed to have given preference and interest that does not necessarily include that well-being of others, which is taken to be moral preference as such as prior to morality. Such as preference are called by Gauthier following the economists weak seed and non-tustic. Did I say non-tustic preference? Secondly, the person are presumed to want to the benefits of the social interaction if they can be without a sacrifice of the individual self-interest. See feminist perspectives on self, sections 1 critique. For the critique for this concept of the rational person, these two aspects of the contract, individual, and a part imply what Rawls is called circumstances of justice. The conditions under which rules for justice could be both possible and necessary. Justice, so a social contract, is only possible where there is some, however, that is not to say that all contractarians' thought is liberal. Hobbes, for example, argued in favor to what Gene Hampton has called the alienation contract. That is a contract that on the part of the people to alienate their rights to educated in their own disputes in self and self-defense to the sovereign on the grounds that was the only way to keep the peace, given the nature of the alternative, which is famously characterizes life. That will be solitary and poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Thus, given a bad enough situation of contractarianism may lead to the legislation of totalitarianism. We talked about that. And another point of criticism that arises from the characterization of parties to contract is that they must be able to contribute to social product of interaction, or at least to threaten to destabilize it. But this is because each individual has to be able to benefit from the inclusion of all those included. But this is obviously leaves many, such as severely disabled, though not to more to be disabled. C. Silvers, 1998. Outside the realm of justice, an implication in that some find completely unacceptable. Kitley, 1999, but the social contract theories also require some rules to the guide formation of agreement. Since they are prior to contract, they must be some source of prior morals, whether natural, rational, and conventional. The first rule that is normally prescribed is that there must be no force or fraud in the making of an agreement. No one is to be coerced into an agreement by the threat of physical violence. The reason for this is the quite straightforwardly prudential and one allowed to use violence. Then there is no real difference in between the contract and arrive in the state that nature of the threatened party. Hence, no scrutiny in the agreement. However, there is a fine between being coerced to the threat of violence and giving up to the one's rights. But being convinced by the threat of penury to make an unfavorable agreement. For this reason, contractarians like the Gauthier are able to argue for a fair and impartial starting the point for bargaining that will lead to secure and stable agreements. But the second rule of the contract is which individualist who is legitimate party to the contract must agree to the rules of justice, which is outcome of the contract. So that's the fundamental elements of contractarianism, and we're going to get to the metaphor of the contract. We'll see who's who up out here. So this is a long read. It's an hour, so you already know what time it is. Yeah, everybody's gonna leave, but that's okay. We're gonna still read because whoever's listening to this on the playback, I'm gonna give you this content. I'm just gonna move forward. Okay, the metaphor of contract, the metaphor of social contract requires some some interpretation. My fault. I'll read that from the top. The metaphor of the social contract requires some interpretation in order to apply it to the situation of morality or politics. Interpretation can be specified by determining answers to three questions. First, what is the agreement on? Possibly the answers include the principles of justice, reservoir laws, the design of basic social institution laws, the commitment to give up the sovereign government in some or all of one's right. Hobbes and Locke, the adoption of this position to be conventionally moral Gauthier. Hampton. The second question is how the agreement to be thought of the hypothetical agreement and actual historical agreement. Implicit historical situation. But the third question is whether the contract device to be used as justification or explanation as discussed above. Normative contractarianism used to contract the device primarily as justification, but it may be the Hobbes and Locke thought that there was an explanatory element that the contract device as well as discovered below. Subversions of contractarianism. Okay, number 3, morals by agreement by David Gauthier's Contractarianism. Okay, orders of oppression. So that's what it says on the metaphor of contract. So it's only 5 things. So we're gonna read the 5th thing in the bibliography. I'm gonna let y'all read that for yourselves, and that's your added data. So we're going to go with Morals by Agreement by David Gathiers. We'll read this off. At this bad boy charging. Okay. Brief sketch of the influential contractarian theory, David Gathiers in his order. Gathiers' project in Morals by Agreement is employ a contractarian approach by grounding morality in rationality in order to defeat the moral skeptic. Gathier assumes that humans can have no natural harmony of interests, that there is much of each individual to be gained through cooperation. According to Gathiers, moral consent on the pursuit of the individual's self-interest requires, because of the cooperative activities also inevitably invoked, a prisoner's dilemma. In a situation which is the best individual outcomes can be had by those who cheat on the agreement while the others keep their part of the bargain. This leads to the social and individual sub-optional outcome, wherein each can be expected to be cheated by the other. But by disposing themselves to an act according to the requirements of the morality, whenever others are also disposed, they can gain each other's trust, cooperative successfully. Contractarian element of the theory comes in the diversion. It comes in the derivation of the moral norms. According to Gathier's compliance problem, with the problem of justified rational rational compliance with the norms that have been accepted must always drive through the justification of the initial situation in the conduct of the contract situation. Gathiers likens the contract situation to a bargain, which each party is trying to negotiate to the moral that will allow them to rational optimally utility. And then he agrees in favor of bargaining and solution that he calls maximum and relative concession. But the ideas of the maximum relative concessions is each bargainer will be most concerned with the concessions that makes from her ideal outcome relative to concessions to others make. If it seems her concessions as it would be the reasonable outcome. Gathier's arguments that his outcomes to minimize the maximum relative concessions of each party to bargaining. Equally important to the solution of the procedure is stated the point from which party begins, but Gathier's there is no vile ignorance. Each party to contract is fully informed of the personal attributes and holdings. Gathier argues that the initial position must have been arrived a non-coercively in compliance to the agreement is to be secure. He adopts when he calls the Lockean proviso and model after Lockheed's descriptive for initial situation of his social contract that one cannot be bettered himself by worsening others. In some of the moral norms, and the rational contractors will adopt and comply with. According to the gauntlet, are left those of the norms that would be reached by the contractors beginning from a position each has attained through her own acts, which have not worsened anyone else, and adopting as their principle for agreement to the rule of maximum relative concession. So that's your morals by agreement, David Gathier's Contractarianism. Okay, the critiques of the normative Contractarianism. So that's number 4. We got it right here. Many critiques have been leveled against particularly contractarian theories and against contractarianism as a framework for the normative thought about justice or morality. See in the entry of the contemporary approaches to the social contract. John Hampton criticized Hobbes. Is her book Hobbes and the Social Contract Tradition. In a way that was directed relevance to contemporary contractarianism, Hampton argues that the characterization of individuals in the state of the name leads to dilemma. Hobbes state that the nature of the potential war, if all against all, can be generated either as a result passions, greed, and fear, and particularly a rationality person's dilemma reasoning, in which the rational players each choose to renege on the agreements made with each other. But if the passions accounts is correct, then Hampton's argued that the contractors will still be motivated by these passions after the social contract is drawn up. So will fail to to comply with it. And it is the rationality accounts is correct. But then the national actors will comply with the social contract any more than they will cooperate with each other before it is made. This critique has an analog for Gauthier theory in that must be claimed that without the contract, individuals will be stuck in society and suboptimal situation that has been enough to the normative to make concessions to each other for some agreement. And yet, the reasoning for the inability to cooperative without the contract cannot continue to operate after the contract is made. Gathier's proposed solution to this problem is to argue that individuals will choose to dispose themselves to be constrained self-interest and maximize rather than straightforward self-interest maximizers, that is to retain themselves not to think first of self-interest but rather to dispose themselves to keep their agreements provided that they find themselves in an environment of like-minded individuals. But this is solution has been founded doubtable by many commenters. See Valenti, 1991. Hampton also objects to the contemporary contractarian assumptions that the interaction is merely instrumental value. She argues that the interaction were only valuable for the fruits of the cooperation that it bears in the self-interest cooperatives, that it would be unlikely those cooperators could successfully solve the compliance problem. In short, they are likely not to be able to motivate the morality in themselves with some natural inclination to morality. Interestingly, Hampton agrees to Gathier's contractarianism is right to require any moral or political norms to appeal to individuals' self-interest as limitations on self-sacrifice or exploitation of any individual. In the important article on being to object property, African American law professor Patricia Williams offers a critique of the contract metaphor itself. Contracts require independent agents who are able to make and carry out promises without the aid of others. Historically, while the white men have been treated as the pure wills of the contract theory, blacks and women will have been treated as anti-will, depending on the irrational, and both ideals are false, whose people should say are dependent on other whole people by defining sooner and contractors and others and incapable of contract, who classes people can be excluded from the realm of justice. Has been taken up by other critics of contractarianism, such as Eva Kide, 1999, who points out that the only dependencies such as the children and disabled people left out consideration by contractarian theories, but their caretakers' needs and interests will tend to be underestimated in the contract as well. So that's the critiques of the normative contractarianism. Okay. So we're gonna get to the reverse contractarianism. So So we're gonna get to the subverse contractarianism. Okay, number 5 right here. We're going in this last part. A descriptive use of the contractarianism has recently been put to exploit in groups. And the group name of the contractarianist project to the illuminated the phenomenon, the oppression of Carol Patterman's sexual contract. 1989 uses contractarian theory to argue there has been a implicit contract among men to enforce patriarchy. She calls her approach a conjectural history, which she used to both illuminated to actual history and patriarchal oppression of women. The ideology of social contract theory, similarly to Charles Mills, argues that the racial contract in 1997, the whites have had an actual historical, sometimes explicit, though often only implicit, contract to enforce white supremacy. But the argument are similar to their contraction contraction outlines. Yeah, contraction outlines. Through the through they differed in the historical and factual details. According to both theories, they are moral, political, epistemological terms of the contract. Its effective have been allowed one group of the persons effectively dominated the subordinate and exploit another group. But the moral terms require the dominant group to equivalent that lives of their group more highly than those to the subordinate to the political deprived subordinate group of the effective political power. The epistemological terms require the members of the dominant group to see themselves as intellectually superior to the dominant, and the social contract then can be seen as justification by the parties to the contract of their interaction of their exploitation of those who are not parties to the contract. The only if the fundamental division of in a group and out of a group is accepted. If the racial sexual contracts were to shown to be rational, they would constitute prima facie critiques of the normative contractarianism, since they would seem to be justified in racism and sexism. Several critiques surveyed above then in the center of the questions: who is allowed to be party of the contract, and how are excluded from the contract to be treated. On the normative contractarian view, it's only rational to include all those who can both benefit of the reciprocated benefits to others. Normative contractarianism, then on the assumption that non-whites and women can both benefit and reciprocate benefits to others, shows the sexual and racial contracts to the fundamentally irrational disability rights activists, however, would still have serious complaint to the lodge against the normative contractarianism, since it is surely in the case of these persons who cannot reciprocate the benefits to others. Such persons would be, on the normative contractarian's view, beyond the scope of the rules of justice. So here you go with the standard library, sydneyedu.au. And it talks about contractarianism as a piece, and it gives you the valid points. And we talked about the severity and things like that. So I'm gonna give you all this copy of the link, and we're just gonna get it. It's an hour. Let's go on, May. Salute. And that's just what it is. Not a problem, man. Not a problem. And we're just gonna get this right quick. I'm gonna drop this right here. So let's see what y'all got over here. Dude's over here tripping. That's just what it is. And that's what it is, and that's what it ain't. So you already know what time it is. So contractarianism is basically, one of those theories that can be complex and things like that. I may do a part two because I don't know what the studies, and we're going to say I'll make part two. Is it relevant today in the 21st century? Because we'll talk about capitalism next week. I might do a part two on contractarianism because this is a topic I want to discuss in depth. So what we just read was subversive contractarianism right here. So yeah, so we got this out of the way, and then put the link in, and just it's in the Stanford Encyclopedia. So I'm gonna drop this down a little bit and knock this off the block. We'll get into it real quick. We get into it real quick. So yeah, the social contract is basically what you see here and what you get, and you see it all the time. It's one of those social norms, and it has its views. So we're gonna go to the philosophy basics. I'm gonna tell you, explain what I mean. So I already got a couple of links on it. It's not much, so we understand it. So it is what it is. Yep. It's an ethical theory and things like that. So I know people ain't gonna go, but the key words of social contract, they was talking about Epicurus and Plato, since he has that dialogue. So Plato is classical Socratic, and yes, he was a nihilist and things like that. Platoism, talked about that, his thing, the Stoicism and all that stuff. So they're the last Stoicism that he preaches. That's what Platoism is, kind of. And then when they talk about Epicurus birthed Epicureanism. I talked about this before. Epicureanism is kind of like Hellenistic, school system, but it's hedonistic as well. It birthed terms like utilitarianism. He said, I'll read this part right here. It says Epicureanism was originally conceived by Epicurus as a challenge to Platoism. Like you saw that's true. And this is based off contractarianism as well. Although arguably Democritus have propounded a very similar philosophy almost a century earlier, it is built on the hedonism right there. Yep. And Stoicism and skepticism. But Epicureanism, like I said, it birthed utilitarianism. That's what a lot of people don't know. It's similar, very similar, because it birthed a lot of that. And then I talk about this as something similar to that, but there's a difference between contractarianism and utilitarianism. Utilitarianism deals with the greatest happiness of the greatest number. That's what it means. And this one deals with social contract. It deals with both of the theory and the political philosophy and the legitimacy political authority. So it's like a similar. So it's a very interesting ideology, things like that. It's got like little criticisms and things. People deal with it. They deal with it all the time. So you got to understand that when you talk about contractarianism, it's one of those philosophies that people rarely use. You know what I'm saying? And they get in the motions of not thinking. So most people don't talk about it as much. It's like another arsenal of content that people go through and things like that in nature. So you know what it is, because most people, they don't like these topics because it gets in their drain. But if I talk about capitalism, it'd be a whole nother story. I know what people are thinking. I know what people are thinking, and they just have it. So I'm not really surprised about what's going on today. So yeah, man, it is what it is. So I'm not trying to go against anybody's word or anything. So because I'm on a different type of time tomorrow. It's just the last of the Thursday thrills, but I will do the daily Thursday news, talk about current events and the niggas that's on here on the internet and then offline as well. I'm gonna get some articles too. We're gonna be talking. So we already know what time it is. Okay, so we already got the hate going on. That's cool. That's cool. You already know what it is. Fuck out of here. But it is what it is. You know, some people are just gonna hate regardless. So I'm used to it by now, and that's just what it is because the playback's gonna be memorable. This one is kind of like a tricky subject. We just talk about the study of, but when we get to the part two part, they ain't gonna be saying shit. This will be a part two because we're going to talk about how is it affecting societal things and things like that nature. So you deal with it on the end. So, you know, I'm just trying to get 2 hours in it. And yeah, it's a good subject. It's a good subject matter. And like I said, most people don't deal with this as much. So let me take this off real quick. I done charged my phone. I ain't listening to this shit with a certain individual. Let me look at this real quick. Yeah. So we got people in here, man. But you know, that's just one of the things. But I will say, like, when you deal with contractarianism, it's just one of those things, man. People just deal with it, and you just got to deal with it because it's a 2 hour thing. So you know, because I'll be back for y'all tomorrow. So I'm gonna talk about something different that I didn't get to discuss Monday. So we're gonna cover. I'm gonna cover it this Thursday, and it's what I saw I think it was last Friday. It's gonna be a reference to last Sunday I was talking about, and we got to kill these conversations. But the audience is tired of hearing it because we heard it last year. I want to address it this coming Thursday, so it's an open discussion. I got the evidence, and we're gonna talk about it. I know people's gonna celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I don't really celebrate that holiday, so y'all don't have to worry about me not celebrating that, you know. And make sure y'all check out the captain and the advisor. They got something special. I think captain's gonna do a Thursday stream. I think it's at 1 o'clock. So I don't know what he's got planned, but you know, I'm just curious. I know I'll be back at 8:10 Eastern. Thursday Thrills. That's the last of the Thursday Thrills. I'll bring Thursday Thrills back in the summer. I'm gonna bring it back in the summertime. I'll bring it back in the summer. Probably June when I start. When the summer comes, I'll start there and end it. When it gets to the end of the month, like close to the end, I won't be back, and I'll post a community post a while. I'll say I'll take a long break and just be out of the way. You know what I'm saying? Because we're doing content for a while, but I'll be back on the end of July. You know what I'm saying? Because you know this can be very draining. So what I'm doing is stepping back. So basically, I'm gonna do my thing. So you know, because I'm gonna do a lot of moving around. So, like I said, contractarianism as it is, this is like the continuation of it. Yes, there will be a part two because I won't get in depth anymore. So shouts out to everybody that came through. Kylie, appreciate you. Just as Shar, Mace. I don't care about the individual that was not on topic. He's irrelevant, but Appreciate you stopping by. Gold P, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. The advisor himself. Appreciate you. All hail, Gray Skull. And Chaos, appreciate you, man. I'll say HBIC RS, appreciate you for coming through. But y'all need to stop timing people out. Y'all don't know these people, man. They need to stop doing that. Let them rock. But that individual, stay on topic, bro. When we talk on this weird stuff, stay on topic. So with that, I'm signing off. I'm gonna say all hail, Gray Skull, and I'm out. Peace.